And it's that very precarious moment where I'm looking all over the screen and there it is, it's rolling. Hello, everybody. I'm looking off to the side because I want to read something to you, a little introduction. Welcome to the Meditation Australia interview series. Meditation Australia is the peak national body for meditation and meditation teachers. My name's Megan Spencer. I'm a meditation teacher, a registered member and a board member, and sometimes I'm a broadcaster as well. So this is a series of conversations for you, the MA community, to listen to keep you connected and inspired. And we thought it might be good at this particular moment in time to talk to good people doing good things in the world of meditation and meditation teaching. And here's one of them right now. This is Dr. Rick Hanson. I'm sure you're quite familiar with his work. He's a best-selling author, a neuropsychologist, a researcher. He was also the keynote speaker at the last Australian Meditation Conference, which is where you and I met for the first time, Rick. And hello. Hi.
I'm so happy, honestly, to be here again and sort of silly delighted at the technology working, helping us stay more connected at this time of physical separation. And I really appreciate, Megan, what you're doing and the work of Meditation in Australia. Always useful, and these days more than ever.
Yeah, and that's partly why I thought it might be good to speak with you, Rick. But first of all, I just want to ask you, how are you in this time? Because I'm guessing, and from being subscribed to a number of your social media feeds, you're a pretty busy person right now. There's a lot of need for what you do. So I just wanted to check in with you and see how you're going.
Well, thank you for asking. I mean, so my family is safe. Our daughter had COVID-19, tested positively, antibodies, had symptoms, total loss of smell. She's late 20s. She came through it okay. She's now living with us. We're doing okay. We are privileged. We're fortunate. So we are inconvenienced, but we are not dealing with the kind of things that so many people are dealing with. And you're right, scrambling. I think a lot of us are scrambling these days. And one of the things that I've been kind of working on is having less friction between me and the world. And that's something certainly that meditation is really helpful for. Less friction, less resistance, faster recovery to equanimity, more resting in a sense of resilient contentment. That includes loss and sorrow, suffering and pain, but somehow in the core of ourselves, we are less disturbable. We're less irkable. I've been working on becoming less irkable.
They're great words. Less disturbable and less irkable. I love it.
It's a work in progress, as my wife will tell you.
Well, I mean, we are here actually to talk about your new book. You've got a brand new book out, May 5th, I believe it came out, called Neurodharma. And I'm, very excited to talk to you about this. But maybe you could tell us initially, before we start that, is what practices are you personally finding of benefit to you, Rick Hanson, the individual, and on that idea of how do we become less irkable, less disturbable, especially at a time where things are disrupted and we're not familiar with them. It's a time of flux and change.
That's a really great question, and I was actually kind of reflecting on it a little earlier today, and in a way, three things really stand out. We draw on practice from lots of areas, but three definitely come forward. One is when something's challenging or rattling of one kind or another, to tune into the feeling in the body. It's like the body memory of calm, well-being, perspective, wisdom, what that feels like in the body as the result of many, many repetitions, many, many internalizations of moments of practice, large and small. Just what's it feel like, in the body, in the core? That's something I do. I pull up that felt sense in the body of sort of calm well-being. Second, I've been doing this thing that is related to what I learned doing the book and researching brain science stuff, which has to do with the value of widening your view, widening our perspective, getting a sense of, let's say, the body as a whole, the room as a whole, your situation as a whole, the whole universe as a whole, interdependent arising, everything's occurring, but that widening view does really good things in the brain. Calms down the default mode network in the brain. Suddenly we take things less personally. It calms down mental time travel. Suddenly we're no longer ruminating about the past or the future, but boom, we're in the present, achieved in part through that sense of widening the view, expanding our view. And then I'd say the last thing I notice I'm doing a lot more of these days is returning to love and coming home to love, appreciating love, valuing love broadly, including compassion for people that disturbed me. but finding that warm-heartedness and taking in the sweetness of people who care about me as well. There's something about returning to the heart that helps us find our footing on shaky ground.
Mm. You know, I've found that quite a lot out in the world when I've been out there, excuse me, especially with strangers. In a way, I think I'm right to say, in a way that I haven't seen for a while, like people are so thrilled to come across another human being and connect. Maybe it's with eyes, with a smile, with a nod, with a, it's not, look, this term, we're all in this together, has been thrown around quite a lot. And of course we are. But when you actually see that manifested just from strangers, I've been really taking a lot of sweetness or solace from that, and people's faces lighting up and like they're remembering that they're here, and this is just a point in time, and we'll be okay. Like maybe we all step back in that smile, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I find there's a little saying for me that they're scared too.
Mm.
They're stressed too. They are feeling impatient too. They're getting stir crazy also. They know someone who's really sick right now, whatever it might be. Like me, there's that fundamental meditative practice, you could say, that like me, you suffer. Like me, you like chocolate. Like me, you worry about your children. Like me, you will die someday. And in that sense of common humanity, common ground, and the common good, which is more important to appreciate these days than ever, in addition to the ways that that's moral and generous and benevolent for others, you can feel immediately. It makes you stronger. It helps you find your footing. It helps you, lean into the next moment and feel better inside.
You remind me of Vijamala Birch, one of my teachers. She talks a lot about stepping back, taking the broader perspective in her program.
Yeah.
But it's such a valuable thing to remember, and it can get you out of all sorts of difficult times. And I know for me, and I told her this when she taught me actually, that I wished I'd have known this idea of stepping back and sort of bringing in the good. You do so much work around this as well.
Yeah.
When I was dealing with grief when I'd lost my mother, and I feel like that broadening, that expansion actually in this particular moment is just, as you say, so valuable. We just have to remember to do it, right?
Yeah. The classic line, the most important thing to remember is to remember the most important thing, right? And here's something that I think is relevant for meditators who have some familiarity, right, with their own internal world. If you just look at it, the structure of suffering, the structure of stress, the structure of unhappiness always involves parts struggling with parts in the mind. There's a sense of internal division by definition. So there is, let's say, something we want, then there's the desire for the thing we want, then there's the attitude about the desire for the thing we want, and then there's the commentary about that, boom, 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 boom. But on the other hand, when you go out to the field as a whole, when you have a sense of your mind as a whole, which I practice a lot in a very somatic way. I start with a feeling of breathing in my chest, and I go out to my body as a whole, establish that sense of the gestalt of the body as a whole, very right-brained for right-handed people, right hemisphere based, and then go out into including hearing and thinking and remembering and all that, and including awareness. So there's more and more of a non-dual sense of your own consciousness as a whole. And you can observe directly that as you move more and more into your mind as a whole, stress, suffering, selfing just starts fading. And the mind as a whole may include physical pain, like Vijayamala grapples with a lot of physical pain. There might be emotional pain. There might be depressed mood. There might be a heavy heart. There might be a sense of outrage at the injustice landing on others. But there's no problem in it. It's just Pema Chodron's line, you are the sky, everything else is just the weather. So you kind of widen out to that felt sense of being who you are, actually, in this moment. Who? You, in the broadest sense, the you are in the broadest sense in this moment. It's incredibly powerful and cool to do that.
It is cool. We're leading into your book now, Neurodharma. As you were talking, and I've looked at the cover, I haven't read it, but I've read a bit about it. I've listened to a podcast that you did with your son talking about it early on, and I've looked at the cover, and there's this amazing picture of a beautiful mountain lit up,
I'll show you.
like inside our brains. Yeah.
They really got the cover right, and it tells the tale of the book. In other words, what can we learn from the people who've made it up here? Or what can we learn from ourselves when we find ourselves up here that we can use down here in everyday life, as well as to help ourselves keep progressing in our own path of awakening? That's exactly what it's about. And how can we use what we've learned from them in both really deep, penetrating analyses of our mind? I draw on the teachings of the Buddha without it being a religious book. That's the Dharma part of the title. But also, how can we learn from the scientists who are telling us an awful lot, more and more, about what kind of circuits and neurochemical flows and patterns of activation are occurring inside ourselves when we are experiencing deep, deep contentment, strength, love, and inner peace. And that's what that book's about.
Yeah, bringing sort of your Buddhist practice and learnings and wisdom and experientially yourself closer to science. So it's called Neurodharma, New Science, Ancient Wisdom, and 7 Practices of the Highest Happiness. And if you don't mind, I just, as an entry point into the discussion about your book, I found a beautiful quote that you posted on your Instagram the other day. The mind and the universe have the same deep nature, to be emergent, empty, and full of possibility. Look, I'm a goosebumpy person. I've just got the goosebumps saying that out loud to myself. So let's use that as a starting point, Rick. Can you take us into the book from that beautiful, gorgeous quote?
Wow. Well, you went for it. Good for you.
Well, you put it out there, but sometimes we need words like this that they just land within us. You know?
Well, okay. So it can sound very abstract, and yet if we really look directly, we can recognize, and this is classic teaching. This is not anything I made up. And you can find different ways of talking about this in the wisdom traditions around the world, not just the Buddhist tradition, including secular traditions. You have people who represent themselves really as secular mindfulness teachers in many ways who can talk about this too. So we have the classic teaching that if you look directly at your experiences, this moment of hearing, this moment of wanting, loving, not loving, it has 3 qualities to it. It's always impermanent. It's always changing. Second, all our experiences are made of parts. They have different elements. You can keep deconstructing them. You can tease apart the threads of the fabric of a particular moment of experience. And our experience is dependently occurring. It's the local expression. It's a local quivering, in effect, in a vast network of causes. That's the nature of our experience. And then people say, well, as a summary word, our experience is empty of substance or essence or absolute self-existence. Emptiness. It's existent. It's not void, but it's foamy. And immediately, as soon as you start to understand your own experience in that penetrating way, just to draw on Buddhist psychology, the Buddha was interested in what we're experiencing. He was, I would say, more deeply interested in the nature of what we are experiencing as inherently impermanent, compounded, and interdependent and thus empty of absolute substance. And when you start to recognize that, the benefit of that is not abstract or philosophical. It gets really, really real. You get less and less attached to your experiences and burdened by them. They feel more like dynamic, fluid, cloudy processes rather than bricks that are weighing you down. Also, with modern science, increasingly, quantum physics, ecology, deep ecology, postmodern ways of looking at human culture, you see the same three characteristics. You see impermanence, you see change, including in the Big Bang universe, which is continuously changing altogether as it expands in space and time. You see compoundedness. You see, like, for example, in the brain, a network with several hundred trillion little nodes, little synaptic microprocessors all sparkling away right now as we have this conversation. And you see interdependence. You see that what's happening in the brain is a local rippling of the vast tapestry of reality. So there too, you see the same quality. And it's really remarkable that every thought and everything has the same deep nature, which I put a little poetically there at that point, to be emergent, open, and full of possibility. And the takeaway on all this is to move from knowing it conceptually, and it's okay. It starts conceptually often. People like the Buddha, others have talked about it kind of conceptually. You start to recognize it. More and more you feel it. And you start to feel like, Megan, this is your nature. This is my nature, to be spacious, dynamic, open, interdependent, profoundly dependent, vulnerably, humbly. There's a humility that's very helpful in all this, which is a good corrective for some of the arrogance we see in some circles in response to the coronavirus.
That's a nice way to put it.
We are open. Yeah, we are spacious. And that's who we are. And in being this way, people lighten up. It's helped me lighten up an awful lot about my stuff, my positions, my precious, this and that. And we become more open to others. We become more gracious, more compassionate, more grateful for this extraordinary moment. This thought right now is the universe operating locally. Wow. Thank you.
Look, I think it's wondrous. You have got 7 kind of chapters, I believe, 7 qualities of awakening that you go through quite systematically in the book, and give people practical, like you give them practices and practical tips, things like that, as well as talking about the ideas and the beauty and the wonder of it. And I wonder, Rick, if you've been waiting to write this book for a very long time. Your son, Forrest, on the podcast Being Well episode that I heard the other day, he said that you seemed super engaged, more than usual, writing this book. And just having read some of the words around it and listened to you talk about that, and actually right now, just what you've just said, have you been waiting to write this book for a while? And if so, why?
Well, here as well, Megan, I really appreciate how you're going for it. And to use maybe a kind of American slang, I don't know, California slang, maybe you use the same terminology. This is a hardcore book. And what I mean by that is that it's completely accessible for someone new to practice. And the 7 qualities that the book talks about developing: steadiness of mind, lovingness, emotional balance, and a sense of fullness already. And then also that sense of wholeness that I talked about earlier in the present as we receive nowness, we could say, opening into allness and feeling supported by allness on the edge of timelessness, with some intuition of what is actually unconditioned as a field of possibility, including maybe even beyond ordinary reality. So those 7 qualities, which are what the book's about: steadiness, lovingness, fullness, wholeness, nowness, wholeness, and timelessness, which I'm describing in a little more poetic way. Those qualities are really useful down in the trenches of everyday life. That said, the book definitely is a straight shot at, the upper reaches of human potential. Let's dust off some of that vision that I think got lost as the 70s became the 80s, and then the 90s, and now the aughts. And hey, let's appreciate, as the Buddha taught, as everyone who's a great teacher has ever taught. Let's go for it. Obviously, there are pitfalls in striving. We don't want to get too caught up in striving. And part of what we're doing is uncovering what is always already true in our pure wakefulness and lovingness and wisdom. That's innate, but it's still a progressive process. So in that spirit of let's go for it, you bet. I definitely went for it in this book. And for me, it was what an opportunity to just marinate in the most central, most profound teachings of my own root teacher, the Buddha himself, in good translations, informed by other people. I have some familiarity with other traditions, including very secular ones. I'm a clinical psychologist, as you know, so I really was able to bring that in. It's kind of like, what is the most hardcore, profound, powerful, ultimate teachings? And then how might those be manifest in our own brains? Whoa. And then how can we use that? How can we operationalize awakening with complete respect for the ultimate mysteries that, in my view, do transcend the ordinary Big Bang universe? With complete respect for that. Out of respect, can we appreciate how these qualities of being, when fully perfected, are grounded in the living body? People pay lip service to embodiment as an experience, but they often don't take into account objective embodiment, that we are a body full of mind. So that enables us to work backwards from the underlying neurobiological basis, plausibly. There's a lot we don't know. I think it's important to not jump too quickly, but we know more than nothing. And if we have to know everything to say anything, you'll never say anything at all, right? So we can work backwards from profound equanimity, complete freedom of mind, unshakable, unconditional lovingness, even with our adversaries. We can work backwards from those states of mind to what's actually going on in the brain, plausibly, embedded in the body, of course, and in life altogether, and then use that to strengthen, in effect, the circuitry of the highest happiness, of an unshakable love and wisdom. Strengthen that circuitry in the living body so that more and more we establish those traits inside ourselves. And more we strengthen them and are able to live from them out into the world. That's the territory of Neurodharma. And I just think, what a beautiful, wonderful thing to do. Not that I'm doing it. I just mean it's a beautiful, wonderful practice to engage. And so, anyway, you're right. This book is, I'm getting older. I've been practicing in various ways for a long time now. I'm kind of coming out of in some ways, I'm getting more open about just sort of my own personal practice and where it's at.
But you
and what I
also
draw
back it
upon
up with
myself.
science as well, like
Oh,
you
yeah,
always have.
definitely.
It's from just listening to you talk. I hear both. I always hear both.
Yeah.
The practice side and what's going on in the brain, and this is how it's mapped. But I had this image of you when you're talking, Rick. It's so funny, like a call to arms. And you mentioned the trenches before, like, sometimes life feels like a bit of a battle, right? So maybe you're just like, that's it, no more Mr. Nice Guy, I'm coming out. This is, and I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory sense. I mean, like, let's just peel it all back. And you say, let's just go for it and let's talk turkey. Let's drill down to this. And, there is my favorite saying is what's called for now, and I talk to when I'm teaching, I often have this conversation with people, listen, like ask that question and listen what that deep response is. And maybe this is what is called for right now, like what you're outlining in your book. But, I think what is called for now is meditation and meditation teachers. What do you think around that?
I think we can learn from the people who've made it their life's work to train in and deepen a stable ground through which sadness and fear and pain pass, but a stable ground that they are identified with in which there is a sense of freedom and a lovingness, a virtue, and a strength of heart to deal with the hardest things of all. And what we can see in the examples of people throughout history, including in the present day, is that the people who've practiced most deeply have become the strongest of all. I think people sometimes think of the Dalai Lama. You could think of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. You could think of other people who are grappling with really horrible situations, and they're not overwhelmed by it. Their practice enables them to deal with it. And I think that's a teaching for us to learn from, to study people who've gone as far up as is possible in the mountain of awakening, broadly described, the highest happiness, the ultimate of human potential, however we conceive of that. The people who've gone the farthest up there, we can learn from them down here in the trenches. It's not just for the chosen few. It's not just for exotic characters in caves. We need what they can offer to us. A little bit like Prometheus coming back with fire and helping out the rest of the people. So I think that's really true, and absolutely for meditation. One of the things that has happened for me, I don't know if it's happened for you too, but probably has actually. The longer I do this, in a way, the nicer I get, but the tougher I get as well. You start to really realize that there's no replacement for personal practice. For me, there's this moment with people, kind of like what you said, Megan, about what does the moment call for? When people tell me their story and how they're suffering and what they're feeling, there's a place first where we let it land in the rhythm with them. And then for me, one way or another, there's a very straightforward question, which is essentially, how are you practicing with that? What's your relationship to it? What effort are you making inside your own mind? What's helpful for you? What would be more helpful for you? How are you practicing with that? And it's true both that no one can stop us from practicing inside our own inner temple, and no one can do it for us, which makes it authentic and means that we will earn the fruits of our own practice. So I think meditation is a fundamental form of practice. It's in many ways foundational for every other form of practice, to be able to come home to yourself. That's how I think of meditation fundamentally. There are many different kinds of meditations, but at bottom, they're a matter of coming home to ourselves in the present, in this moment of experiencing, maybe even coming home to our deepest, truest, and perhaps even transpersonal roots of our nature. It's coming home to ourselves. So people have to come home to themselves to make their way in this world. And I think a lot of people experience a chronic inner homelessness.
That's an amazing thing to say. That's an amazing
in their
thing
own
to
heart.
say. Wow.
Yeah.
A chronic inner homelessness.
Inner homelessness, yeah.
Gosh, Rick. Oh, wow. Look, one of the other things that I highlighted, I wrote down from another quote you said in this regarding Neurodharma, this book. You wrote, "It is full of hope that there are simple things we can do each day, no matter how insane the world is around us, to establishing lasting, true happiness inside ourselves." You have this deep, abiding optimism, I think. This is my impression, at least. You tell me if I'm wrong. In the ability for us to change ourselves for the better. I mean, positive neuroplasticity is your life's work, obviously.
Yeah.
But you have this incredible hope and optimism. And I just wonder, where does that come from? Does it come from being a Buddhist? Does it come from being a meditation teacher? Does it come from being a scientist, or maybe a little bit of the three? I'm curious around that.
That's interesting. And so I would say a lot, I'm from California, and I think of, like, in some ways, perhaps I'm wrong here, but for America and in the West of America, California in particular, there's this sense of the frontier, the sense of moving into possibility. And then I think also about the history of your own country, let's say, and obviously people have been there in Australia for 40,000 years, certainly at least, and before the more European colonists came. And speaking just of that part, there's still that sense of the future as the undiscovered country. And I guess that's where I am optimistic. I'm very realistic about what is the case currently and what the past has been, and realistic about the nature of the world around us, trying to see it realistically and really clearly. I don't believe in positive thinking or looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. I want to see the whole of reality. And I think that's very scientific in that spirit of respecting and bowing at the altar of reality. That's the fundamental altar I bow at. What is reality? What is the case, including ultimate reality? And also it's very much in the meditative traditions to, no one who's meditative says, be more deluded, be more ignorant, be more in denial about how you really experience life. No one says that. They all say, seek the truth. For example, in the Christian tradition, it's the truth that sets us free. So that's maybe a long-winded way of saying that I'm very hopeful about the possibility that each one of us can grow a little every day. Whatever the present is and whatever the past has been, every single day, we can all learn a little bit. That was a turning point in my life when I was a teenager, to realize that no matter how horrible it was, I could always learn a little every day. I could learn how to not be so nervous around girls. I could learn how to not be so shy around other people. I could learn how to not be so angry with my parents. I could learn these things. I could help myself. And so I'm very optimistic about that. And there's tons of evidence that shows that if people make usually fairly small efforts, a few minutes a day, it really adds up over time. And there's research evidence of different kinds. There are studies on non-human animals that show this as well. And we can experience it in our own lives, that if we make efforts, if we keep taking the next step and the next step with our friends, bringing others along, learning from people that are a little farther up the trail, one step at a time, one breath at a time, one synapse at a time, one drop at a time, we really, really, really can become more and more of who we long to be, which often means coming home to who we've always been.
Yeah, and listening to those who have gone before us. You made reference to First Nations people in your country and mine, and they have so much wisdom for us if we're listening.
100%.
And it's all about listening too, isn't it, Rick? Yeah. Look, I think maybe we might start to wind up our amazing conversation. I'm just so grateful to you for your time today. Would you mind doing me a favor and holding up that beautiful book of yours again?
Break my heart.
It's a beautiful cover, yeah. And this is Rick's new book, Neurodharma. Where can people buy it, Rick?
Oh, that's very sweet. They can get it anywhere. The cover might look a little different in Australia because there's a different publisher, writer out of the UK. So I think the cover that you may see has more like brainwaves that also become a mountain. It's available anywhere. And if you'll permit me, Megan, I'll just read the first paragraph, which really kind of sets this. Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Which really just says what it's all about.
Yeah.
So here's the first paragraph. I've hiked a lot in the mountains, and sometimes a friend farther up the trail has turned and looked back and encouraged me onward. Such a friendly gesture. Come join me. Watch out for the slippery ice. You can do it. I've often thought about those moments while writing this book, which is about the heights of human potential, about being as wise and strong, happy and loving as any person can ever be. If those heights are like a great mountain, awakening is the magnificent journey that carries you along toward the top. Many real people have gone very far up, the great sages and teachers throughout history, as well as others no one has heard about, and I imagine them turning with a sweet smile and beckoning us to join them.
It's lovely. It's just lovely. Yeah. Thank you for reading that. Before I let you go, in the true spirit of positive neuroplasticity and just one thing, what's the best thing or most beautiful thing you've seen or experienced today?
Could you say that again, Megan? You
Sure.
broke up.
Yeah. I'm asking you, what is the most lovely thing, or the best, or yeah, the loveliest thing you've seen or experienced today?
Well, your smile is really popping out, honestly. Um, I know I should probably try to answer faster, but you're really leading me to reflect. I guess, honestly, it's actually true that tied for first place is your enthusiasm for this. Genuine enthusiasm for practice. I feel in you, we share it. It's not special. I'm sure lots and lots of people have that, but I think that's one of the most beautiful things, that enthusiasm for practice and kind of delight in it and caring about it. I just think that's wonderful.
That's very kind of you. Well, it is wonderful,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it
It's
really
excellent.
is. It really, really, really is. And it makes me think about the root of the word for enthusiasm, which you may know, it has to do with endeos. It's the divine within, or however you want to characterize that. There's something in us that comes forward, and you can see it in children, and who just delight in the possibility of something really good. And I just think that through meditation, certainly, and through appreciating teachers of meditation like you, and um, you know, we share in that delight of the real possibilities for human happiness, including for the ways in which that's such a service to others, right? We practice for others as well as for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick, so much. A deep bow to you, to use one of your terms. You're a great teacher and you're very inspiring. So thank you very much for talking to the Meditation Australia community today. And you've got all sorts of things going on, and people can access these events and offerings and resources on your website, which is rickhanson.net. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll say thank you very much and bid you adieu, and just let you know, or thank you also, people listening right now. Our guest today, Dr. Rick Hanson, neuropsychologist, meditation teacher, and author of the new book, Neurodharma, in addition to many others. And Meditation Australia is a member organisation, so if you'd like to find out about joining, services offered, resources, or even if you're a meditator and like to find a registered teacher in your area, just visit meditationaustralia.org.au. Thank you for listening. My name is Megan Spencer. Thank you, Dr. Rick Hanson. What a pleasure, and we'll speak to you again another time.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.